Hi, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and thank you very much for joining either the podcast or the YouTube version of the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you took just a second to subscribe either on your podcast app or in YouTube. It doesn't really do anything. It's not going to send you any emails. It's just going to show up more often on your feed, and it does me a lot of good in terms of getting more exposure for this work I do to support dads. I'd also like to invite you to come to my page, GreatDad.com/go, if you'd like to discuss more about any of the issues that we are covering within the podcast, especially if there's any way I can help you to be a sounding board in your own struggles to be a dad and to be there for your family. So take a look at that. It also includes a link to my course on gratitude, where at GreatDad.com/gratitude with a offer to take that course for free. So see you in a second. Hey, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and I'm here again with my weekly series talking to fathers about modern fatherhood, and we try to mix it up a lot. So today we've got an expert talking to us about computers for kids, Macs versus PCs, for all the different ways they can use them. So welcome, Damien Schreurs.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Paul.
Yeah, so you've got the greatest URLs in the world, Macpreneurs. You've got a podcast as well, which I listened to a little bit the other day. A lot of great information, and I wanted to have you on to just talk about, as I know you've got your kids are a little bit older, and we're probably both a little bit handicapped in that way because mine are 18 and 24 now too. But the relative value of PCs versus Macs. Now, I guess just to start out, when I first started using Macs, and for a long way into the 2000s, I remember dinner parties where people would just look at me like, "You're still using a Mac? That will never, you're a fool for even, still continuing to think that product has any kind of future at all." And then here we are. Now the Mac, controls the world for a lot of people, though a lot of people are still fixed on the PCs for corporate environments. What is the Mac, I guess, as it was kind of then because of its school usage, is it still kind of the default computer for kids in general, or do PCs and Macs kind of play a role?
Well, I think it depends on the region, right? In the US, Apple's market share for computers is much bigger. There are many more Macs. I don't have the exact figure, but in my mind, it's around 40 to 50%.
Right.
Versus here in Europe, where it's more towards the 10% or sometimes lower, and then or the rest of the world is lower than that. The global market share for Apple computers is around 10%.
Wow, it's still that low. I
Yeah.
perceive it as
It's
very
still
much higher.
that low. So to give you an order of magnitude, there are roughly between 1 and 1.5 billion iPhones, right? So the mobile device sold by iPhone is 10 times. You divide by 10 to get the number of iPads, and you divide by 2 again to have the number of Macs. So
Wow.
for memory serve, 100 million iPads, 50 million Macs.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So now I think again it's based on the geography, but I think in the US a lot of kids are more exposed actually to Chromebooks via
Hmm.
schools, right? It's either iPads, right? Schools go Apple, but they take iPads, or they go with Google and they use Chromebooks. And yeah, here in Europe where I am, I do not know schools who go through these kinds of programs.
Hmm.
It's more the parents who are in charge of buying a computer, and then I guess here in Europe it's more if the parents are used to PCs, they will buy a PC or they will give the older PC to their kids.
Right.
And
Well,
if they are an Apple family,
Well, maybe that's a good question just to start out with, is the fact that there's so much interoperability. There was a long time where if you wanted to be on Word, you could send a document in Word to somebody else who was on a PC from a Mac, but
Mhm.
there weren't a lot of apps that actually worked cross-platform like that, because people would be using some SAP thing at work that would never work on the Mac, and Adobe, I don't know, Adobe maybe I think Adobe started on Mac and then moved to PC, or there were a lot of creative apps that did not even work on a PC. Uh,
Mhm.
for a kid, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's harder the other way around, is like there are a lot of games for PCs, but in terms of everyday work life for most of us and for most kids, it's now on Google Docs. And
Mhm.
is a PC or is even making this choice even an important consideration for parents?
Yeah, nowadays it doesn't matter much between a Windows PC or a Mac. It's really if the parent, right? If the parent is not in the Apple ecosystem, it's
Hmm.
very likely that they will go the PC route.
Yeah,
If they are in the Apple ecosystem already, and in that case, most of the time the kids will already have an iPhone.
right.
And when they have an iPhone, yes, they could use a Windows PC, but it's easier for them to use a Mac. At that point, I guess we will touch a little bit on the parental control systems that there are on both platforms. But once, as a parent, right, and that's my case, right? My I have two teenage daughters, 16 and 18. They will turn 16 and 18 this year. And I think they started when they were six or seven, and they had an iPod Touch. So it's like an iPhone, but without the
Yeah,
SIM
right,
card.
right, right. I remember those.
And yeah, and it was very easy. So I created a children's Apple account, and that needs to be tied to my personal Apple account. And once you are into that train, the PC or another device or an Android device was not even a question for me. It was like, yeah, it was so easy to continue in that ecosystem.
Yeah. Does do PCs and Macs? 'Cause I have not worked on a PC in a long time, since my corporate days. But do they both have parental guardrails built in, or is it mostly just Apple that has done that?
No, no, no. They both have. So with
Yeah, those
uh,
government
with Win
requirements.
with Windows, it's called Microsoft Family Safety, and you need to have again a family account. So as a parent, so you in both cases you need an account with the provider. So on the Apple side, you need an Apple account. With Microsoft, you need a Microsoft account. And it's very similar system. You need to create a children's account that will then be tied to your parents' account. And
Right.
once it's done, and so that means that my daughters they have an Apple email address, and then they also have an Outlook
Right.
email address. They have two
Right.
email addresses because
And
I need to,
a Gmail address.
and they
And
have a Gmail address
yeah.
as well for all the Google stuff. And yeah, it's very, very similar. You can configure how much screen time they have on the devices. So on Windows, it will be just Windows PCs, right? Sorry, and the Xbox gaming console, right? That
Yeah.
both
Oh,
are
correct.
tied. Yes. So you can create some limits for the Xbox as well. The only difference is that you have more granularity on the Apple side. So
Yeah.
with Apple, with the iPhone, the iPad, the Macs, uh, applications are grouped by categories. And so you can say the category entertainment, right? Any application that belongs to that category will be then subject to the time limit that you set. On the Windows side, you have to select all these applications individually and create time limits for them.
Oh,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was always the thing. I guess I once heard that it was kind of like Catholicism versus Protestantism. In the Mac world, everything is delivered to you. There's only one way to look at Protestantism is it can all over the place, all kinds of different roles, different depending on what the application was, and the benefit for you're dealing with one company with a standardization across all kinds of different apps, including external apps that have to be approved by Apple. So I guess what we're saying is that both systems work for kids and families, but they're I guess what the family has already, because another consideration is the interchangeability of apps and services. Like you can get an iCloud family account, or there's sharing of or downloadable audiobooks, all kinds of different things within the Apple universe if you're part of that iCloud plan. Whereas in the PC world, that's a lot more scattered. You have a lot more scattered providers. I mean, just the fact that you've got Google and Microsoft competing for that space makes it divided.
Yeah, Microsoft
Yeah, I don't know if
is
there's
getting
anything in the PC world that's like that, where you get family control over a lot of different things at the same time through their subscription versus
yes, for Microsoft 365.
Apple.
On the PC side, on the Microsoft side, I have a Microsoft 365 subscription, a family subscription. So I share Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and 1 terabyte of OneDrive storage with my daughters, so they can install. And what is nice is that with a Microsoft 365 subscription, you can install the applications on up to 5 computers and 5 mobile devices. And for the computers, it doesn't matter if it's a Mac or a PC. And it's not 100% parity in capabilities or functionalities for the, let's say, Excel on Mac versus Excel on Windows. It's less, we have less functionality on the Mac, but it doesn't matter. We can still install the applications. And as soon as we sign in with our Microsoft account, automatically we get all the Microsoft 365 subscription features. And and also on the Microsoft side, they now have a Microsoft store. So similarly, like with Apple, right? We can have purchases. We can control the purchases. We can say, okay, my child can only download applications from the Microsoft store for 12 plus or 16 plus or stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. But would you say, I mean, nowadays, is there any value in even being within the Microsoft universe? Since, on the Mac side, you've got all those, they're not great products, but their number sheets or whatever, they've got analogs to all the different Word things that come free with the computer. And then you've got Google, who's got the same spreadsheets, the same Word-like documents. They've got presentation software. They've got all that built in too. Is there any reason for owning or for buying a Windows 365 subscription anymore, or whatever it's called, Office 365?
Yeah. The Microsoft 365 subscription is mandatory if you want to be able to use the Microsoft Office applications on any platform. So even on Android, on Android tablet, on an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, well, you can purchase standalone licenses, right? You can purchase today, I think it's the version 2024. So you can, Office 2024, you buy it until Microsoft provides security updates. You can use it and you paid, I don't know, $200, $250, something like that, fixed price. But the subscription is now, the family subscription has been bumped to $120, I think $120 per year.
Wow. Yeah, I don't get it. My kids, I use Word because I've been using Word for forever, and I use Excel same way. But our kids, I don't even ever opened up those. They're on Google Docs. They would see
Mhm,
no value in having something that lives on your computer and then that you store in the cloud versus something that's already in the cloud and then
mhm.
you can use wherever.
Yeah, again, it depends on the school. Here in Europe, for instance, my children, they are at the European school and they are completely on Microsoft.
Okay, so you
So
don't have a
it's,
choice.
yeah, exactly. They
Yeah.
actually, they have two Microsoft 365 accounts, the one that I have made for them, but they have also a school account with they have an Outlook email address. So when they do remote schooling, it's through Microsoft Teams. So
Hmm.
if the school has chosen Microsoft, they will have and
Right.
they have pretty good experience actually. My daughters are pretty good at doing PowerPoint presentations, creating reports in Microsoft Word, and Excel not so much. They do not use it very much, but Word and PowerPoint, yeah, they know how to use it.
That's really it's an interesting cultural difference in how they grow up using that platform because I don't think anybody thinks it's the most creative and creative friendly suite of softwares, but it certainly was the standard for many
Mhm.
years after Excel stole it from Lotus 1, 2, 3, if you remember all the way back to
Yes,
that. So,
yes.
but so your kids are getting that experience on Excel. I don't, practically between Excel and Sheets or even numbers, there's not a lot of difference for most people. The basic functionality is
Mhm.
going to be there. I think parents should know too that all, at least here in the US, maybe it's different in Europe, you're not going to be able to get by whether you want to keep your kids in the Mac universe or wherever without just no way around that because just in the whole Google universe now to use YouTube or anything else, you have to have that. Is that true in Europe as well?
Yeah, yes, it's the same as well. That's why my
Yeah.
daughters they have the three types of accounts. Yeah, they have
Yeah. And I think
Gmail
parents should be
address
aware that
and so on.
people should be aware as well as kids is that Gmail address sometimes becomes the default address. And though you may be using it as just your identification for getting into YouTube or some other Android product, they promulgate that email address around, and suddenly you may be unaware, but you've got a lot of email coming to you at a Gmail address. Most of
Mhm.
it's not important at all, but I have gone back there periodically because I'm not a Gmail user and found things that were like they were relatively important. It was attached to some uh, Google document, and then that people infer that that was my personal address and were sending me things over time.
Mhm.
So if your
Mhm.
kids are doing that, you make sure that they realize that they could be getting email on that platform
Mhm.
they don't have. How about
Yeah,
in terms of the actual machinery? You talked a little bit about the Android the Chromebook, but I guess is that the standard now that whatever it was, the $200 to $300 Chromebook
mhm.
uh, versus a more expensive product like an actual MacBook or even an iPad would probably be more expensive than those very, very inexpensive Chromebooks.
Yeah, exactly. The iPad. I think the entry level iPad for education is $300, but it's still more
Oh yeah.
expensive than Chromebooks bought in bulk.
Well, so in I think a lot of the U.S. because Mac now is the kind of it's more the status thing between certainly the iPhone gives it that status and those beautiful stores and everything else. But in the absence of that, would you say that a Chromebook is a better choice for kids, money wise, to do most of what they need to do if they had to?
I would say, yeah, if their school is already using Chromebooks,
Hmm.
yes, actually, because um, I would say even from a security perspective, it's much more secure, even more secure than a Mac.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, because it's based on Linux, and the footprint. There are so few of those devices that, yeah, uh, to hack a Chromebook, you basically need to find a security flaw in Chrome, but no, even in a fork of Google Chrome. I on a side note, my mom, whose Mac was dying, I actually installed Chrome OS on
Uh-huh.
an old iMac because
Huh.
she has a Gmail
Oh, because it could
address.
run Linux. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, and she's completely on the Google. She likes her iPhone, she likes her Mac, but when she opens the Mac, she launches Chrome, and she has a Gmail tab and a YouTube tab, and she basically lives in a browser,
Right.
and she's completely in the Google ecosystem. And
Oh,
so I realized that I had an old Mac that could not get security updates, right? Completely abandoned by Apple.
uh-huh.
Hardware working perfectly.
Yeah.
Very
The-
nice 21
6
inch
years.
iMac.
6 years is their obsolescence time
Yeah.
period. Yeah.
So we're talking about it's a 2011 iMac
Hmm. Yeah.
working perfectly. I
Right.
installed Chrome OS on it. I just logged into her Google account, and yeah, what is nice with the Chromebook and the Chrome OS, you can very easily turn any website into a dedicated application that you open from the dock like you would
Hmm.
do on a Mac.
Right.
So from the look of it, it looks a lot like a Mac OS, and I could tweak it so that for her, it was like launching something from the dock.
Well, that's really interesting that you say that the Linux machines like the Chromebook are actually more secure. Now they used to some installed base, so it's harder to find. The probability that a hacker would would have a better chance hitting you with if you had a PC than a Mac made it more of a target. Is there anything about Macs that make them more secure than PCs in general still today, or is it kind of now a toss-up between both of them being insecure machines?
I think it's a toss-up,
Oh, really?
but
Wow.
yeah. Is um, what I like to say is that macOS is more securable.
Hmm.
So it's easier to secure, and it's you can tighten it. Yeah, you can tighten it much better and much easier than a Windows PC. But the thing is, you, especially both Windows and macOS are closed source operating systems, right? So only the vendor knows exactly what's inside, plus all the security researchers who try to poke at it, right? I'm
Hmm.
listening to a podcast called Security Now, and the host, Steve Gibson, has a nice analogy. He says that security is porous. The more pressure you apply to it, the more chances something will go through. And I
Right.
strongly believe it's the same with macOS and Windows. When people poke at macOS, they find security flaws.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
guess anything. Recently,
yeah,
I've had web root security on my computer for a long time, which causes problems in its own way because it's a big, basically a stronger firewall. But I've read recently that some of those programs that actually add on a security level like web root really aren't worthwhile doing using at this point. Do you know much about that security level, whether the computers themselves have what you need built in, and it's up to the user to kind of avoid going to websites that are bad or clicking on links that are bad or installing on their own bad software?
no, I think we need both on Windows and Mac to install security software. the built-in capabilities or the built-in security mechanism are not enough. But it's always a balance, because the more security tools you install on top of it, the more potential doors for being attacked is also there. Because obviously what happens is that the hackers, yes, they poke at the operating system, and they poke at the browsers, right? The browser is another vector of attack, so they poke at both. But especially for large corporations, they also poke at the security solutions, because there was in the news that a firewall product was found to have a security vulnerability. The firewall is supposed to protect the enterprise, yeah, exactly. And the bad guys were going through the firewall because they found a flaw there, right? So,
right.
But at the same time, you could not afford to have these kind of, you cannot afford not to have additional protection. And yeah, for the Mac, especially so for my business clients, they all have an additional security tool, and we have double backup systems, local backup system, cloud backup systems. Yeah.
So what do you recommend for parents in terms of the security, or what have you seen in terms? Do you have any best practices for people trying to make sure their kids aren't have a safe experience online?
Mm-hmm. So two things. The first is the privileges, the permissions that the user account of the child has on the computer, right? So always configure the child's account as a standard account, not an administrator account. That I would say that would be the mistake number one. They create a secondary account, and that secondary account has a lot of privileges. I don't remember when, if that statistic is still valid, but a few years ago there was a stat saying that 90% and we're talking about Windows, right? 90% of cyber attacks could be blocked or stopped simply if people had a standard user account rather than an administrator user account, right? So if they do that, and anyway, when we talk about on Windows parental controls, you will see a warning in family safety, a warning telling you whether the child has a standard user account or admin user account. And if it has an admin user account, you will see a notice saying you, warning, danger, your child has too many privileges on the computer. So that would be step number one. And then step number two is to do web filtering, right? Restricting the types of websites that the child can visit from the browser. Now, usually it's a on-off switch, both on the Apple ecosystem and on Windows. But you can specify websites if you want to. You can add, and you can say, no, those websites are whitelisted and those websites are blocked by default. So yeah, web filtering. And if I go a step further, because most, and I see that with my daughter on the Windows PC, she's playing a lot of games, right? We were talking about why a PC versus a Mac. On the gaming side, we still have more options and choices on the Windows side. But my daughter, she's also in a browser, in chat groups and stuff like that with other players.
Right.
And so paying attention to the browser extensions that the child installed. And maybe a short story, a story of, a warning story. My daughter, she lost the equivalent of, let's say, it would be $100 of in-game currency, because she was chatting somewhere, Discord or something like that, and she was promised to have additional in-game money, right? She clicked on the
Right.
link. What she did not realize is, by clicking on the link, what happened is that the attacker got the session cookie of my daughter in Roblox, right? Because she was logged in another tab. She was logged into Roblox.
Wow.
The person got the session cookie. So just maybe for people who are not technical, it's basically it's basically the key to your house, right? You give the key to your house to somebody, and they enter the house like that. And so no need for a password, no need for, and I had configured two-factor authentication. So normally when she logs into a new device, I get a notification with a code that she has to enter, right? I had put as much protection as possible on her Roblox account, but the other person didn't, right? They could bypass that. And it was in the evening. She went to sleep, and the next morning she realized that, so she noticed that in Roblox she had a new item, a new in-game, I don't know, a hat or something like that, that was worth nothing,
Right.
but she supposedly had purchased for the equivalent of $100.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
And
So,
from that day on, she realized, okay, now I have to be careful when I click on links in a browser.
yeah. So your first point about changing the admin, is that good advice for all of us, is to use an admin account just for the admin of the machine, but actually use an ID within our Mac or our PC that's not the admin for our day to day?
For normal users, I would not necessarily recommend that, but for businesses, yeah, for professionals, those who
Right.
use their computer for business, yes, most of my business clients, that's what I do. I create um, another account which becomes the admin, and the account that my client, the solopreneur, the business uses, get degraded, quote unquote, to a normal
Right.
user
Right.
account. Yeah.
Okay. Makes
But
sense.
they know the username and the password of the admin account, right? They have full control of their device. And whenever they need to do big changes or install applications outside of the App Store, then they know they have to enter that admin username, admin password to do this big change.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Well, I know you've got some tips. Well, tips at macpreneur.com about not just kids usage, but all of our usage, and what you really are an expert at also is helping people make their usage of their specifically Macs a lot more efficient through all kinds of different short codes and hot corners and all the different things that the Mac has involved, that it built into it that a lot of us don't even use. I took your quiz and I
Mhm.
realized how abysmally bad I am after having used a Mac. I mean, I don't want to date myself, but man, I've been using a Mac for a long, long time, since the
Mhm.
beginning of my career in advertising. But all those tricks they always seem like they're a lot harder work to learn than they are to actually use. Like even a quick keyboard copy paste command, to me, I never remember to do it. It's easier for me to move the cursor up and to edit and do the rest of it. How does somebody develop that? It's almost like learning a new language to use all the different things between mission control and the hot corners and all the rest. When you work with people, I guess adults mostly, how do you get them to change over their daily habits to take advantage of those?
We do it gradually, right? I tell them, look, something needs to become second nature, right? And if you try too many things at the same time, you will not be able to remember all of it. So we look at the things that the person does the most, and then we prioritize, right? Okay, let's start with, let's be comfortable on the Mac, for instance, with Spotlight, command space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time you have to launch an application, catch yourself using the mouse, going to the dock or Finder
Right.
applications and stuff like that. Remember command space, command space. And once it becomes more than a habit, it's really a muscle memory. Right? Once it's muscle memory, then we go through another thing, right? And let's see how we can slowly start to reduce unnecessary clicks, unnecessary typing, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, even command space. So you command space will bring up the spotlight. So then you then have the option to type in the name of an app. But that doesn't sound like
Yes.
that's a saver to me versus just moving my cursor down and clicking on the app in the dock. Or is there a lot of unaccounted time there that we don't even think of that is like I move my eyes down to the dock and then I've got to search the icons. Now there are 3,000 icons in that dock, and all that's taking a lot more time than command space Word, for example.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's what it is. And it's also cursor movement. For the fun of it, but when I was preparing a bunch of the episode on the season, I had a season on productivity, and I installed an app that was measuring the distance that my
Yeah,
cursor
right.
was taking. We're talking about thousands of miles in a matter of months, right?
That's how I get my
Thousands.
exercise in.
Yes, but there are applications where you can install on a Mac, and it will tell you, it will measure how, how many miles and how many clicks you do in a certain period of time. Yeah.
Well, just give me an idea quickly if you fill in this thing, the macpreneur.com/tips, just to get an idea of how efficient you are. I like the fact that you give the results without having to wait for them to come to you. And you could put your name in and a false email address and just see the results without having to, get the follow up. But I'm sure you're trying to engage your audience by generosity and not making it mandatory. But if you sign up, that you get the results, and then you set up a half an hour conversation with you about this. What is your objective? Are you trying to establish like an ongoing coaching relationship about how to use your Mac more efficiently? You work with small business, you work with larger enterprises. What services do you offer around that?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm just offering one-on-one coaching for solopreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
That's my the entryway on that. But long term, my vision is to actually have a community, a paid community of with other Macpreneurs. So for me, Macpreneurs is the contraction of Mac
Yeah,
and
right.
solopreneur. Basically, people, small solopreneurs who cannot imagine running their business on anything else than a Mac.
Yeah, yeah,
And having a community of like-minded people who would then exchange tips. Because even though, yes, I know pretty well the thing, I don't know everything that can be known, right? And that's why I do the podcast and I interview other solopreneurs, because I discover new tools, new techniques, tips and tricks, and having a community where people could share their tips and could also maybe help each other
yeah.
when needed, because I can help maybe 100 people, but above that, yeah, it's better to,
Yeah.
it's easier
Well,
to
and
help each other.
solopreneurs, entrepreneurs have different use cases, and it,
Mhm.
uh, it's rare that it's a one size fits all type of thing. And then AI is making all this so changing so rapidly, especially in terms of workflows. It's a really dynamic situation. So I think worth checking out that tips, macpreneur.com/tips, just to see how little you know and how much you could learn. Well, this has really been interesting, Damien. Thanks for covering a lot of ground with us. We may have wanted for dads to focus a lot more into kids security. We've done other shows on that in the past, so I don't, no, I never worried about the diversity of the types of conversations we have. But I think there's some good things to know about where we are currently, PC versus Mac. I took it for granted that Mac was just the dominant choice for a lot of kids, but you've really disabused me of that notion, especially how it is in Europe. I did promise I would show you my MacBook from
Yes.
1992, and I think this was $2,500 in 1992. So it was a
Mhm.
huge investment. I mean, I don't know what that was like. That must be $13,000 probably at least in current dollars. And
Mhm.
I brought this to my job. We had PCs at my work, and I used my Mac, and I put them to shame to finally get get Macs in our workplace as well.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, so visit Damien at macpreneur.com/tips. Thanks again, Damien. Thanks for taking the time with us. If you want to hear more about my offerings, which have nothing to do with how to be more efficient with your Mac, you can go to GreatDad.com/go. Okay, till next time, stay strong.